Good day. My name is Cavill, and welcome back to The Dragon's Lair. Today, we are delving deep into the Doctor Who universe. Today, we're going to be discussing the Time-Crossed Lovers. We're going to be talking about the romance of the Doctor and River Song. So, without further ado, sit back, relax, get yourself something tasty to eat, and maybe something nice to drink, and settle in as we explore the Time-Crossed Lovers. Stories are usually told from beginning to end, and we are comfortable with that. We understand the trajectory of a life. From birth, we grow, we love, and eventually the long goodbye. This is the linear comfort of the human experience. But what happens when you meet the person you love in the wrong order? What happens when your first kiss is their last? Today, we are venturing to the 51st century. We are stepping foot into a world that is not a world, but a repository, a planet-sized monument to every book ever written. But as we walk through the stacks of the library, we aren't looking for books. We are looking for a woman who arrived at the end of her life only to find that the man she spent her entire existence with doesn't even know her name. This is the story of River Song, and to understand the tragedy of her heart, we have to start at her grave. In 2008, Stephen Moffat introduced us to a two-part story that would redefine the emotional stakes of Doctor Who: Silence in the Library and Forest of the Dead. At the time, we thought the silence in the library was a literal warning. We didn't yet know that the silence was a name that would haunt the Doctor for years to come. It was a masterful linguistic seed, a pun that served as a prophecy. But beyond the monsters and the clever wordplay, these episodes serve as a philosophical foundation for one of the most complex love stories ever committed to fiction. When River Song steps out, she isn't just a character, she is a narrative impossibility. She is a woman who possesses a blue diary filled with the Doctor's future. In the world of fiction, there is a concept known as dramatic irony, where the audience knows more than the characters. Usually, this leads to tension. Here, it's used for a profound existential ache. We see the Doctor, the 10th Doctor, at the height of his lonely, godlike power, looking at this woman with suspicion. He's cold, he's clinical, he treats her like an intruder in his timeline. But to the viewers, we are forced to watch through River's eyes. We see the realization hit her like a physical blow. She looks at him and sees her Doctor, but his eyes are empty of recognition. This is where the narrative philosophy of River Song begins, the tragedy of asynchrony. In most love stories, the bond is built on a shared memory. Do you remember our first date? Do you remember when we argued? Do you remember when we decided to be together? Memory is the mortar between the bricks of a relationship. But for River and the Doctor, the mortar hasn't been mixed yet. She is standing in the ruins of a cathedral of love that he hasn't even begun to build. There is a specific kind of loneliness in being the only person who remembers a love affair. River is essentially a ghost haunting her own life at this point. In Silence in the Library, she has to perform. She has to be brave, flirtatious, a gun-toting archaeologist, while carrying the soul-crushing knowledge that the man standing in front of her is a younger version that doesn't love her yet. And she totally is unaware that her death is merely hours away. Think about the sheer emotional discipline required for this, to look at the love of your life and realize you have to start from scratch. Or worse, to realize today might be the day you die, and he will only start loving you once you're gone. This subverts the traditional star-crossed lovers trope. They aren't kept apart by feuding families or warring kingdoms. They are kept apart by the very fabric of time itself. They are time-crossed. As we move into the Forest of the Dead, the philosophy shifts from the pain of memory to the nature of identity. The library's computer system has saved the people who are consumed by the Vashta Narada, storing their consciousnesses in a digital dreamscape. This raises a terrifying question. Is a person their body, or are they data of their experience? When River sacrifices herself to save the Doctor, plugging herself into the terminal to jumpstart the system, she is making a choice that defines her entire philosophy. She knows that the Doctor cannot die here. If he dies here, he never meets her in her past, his future. Her sacrifice is a closed loop of devotion. She dies so that he can live to meet her, so that she can eventually die to save him. It's a beautiful, terrifying circle of self-negation. But look at what happens after she dies. The Doctor finds a way to upload her consciousness to the library's core. She becomes a data ghost. This is the ultimate Moffat-esque exploration of the soul. In the Forest of the Dead, River isn't truly gone, but she isn't truly alive. She exists in a happy ending of a digital afterlife, surrounded by friends she knew and a peace she never knew she had, a peace she never knew in her chaotic life. Yet, in this digital heaven, tragedy persists. She is a memory stored in a machine, waiting for a man who is still moving in the opposite direction. Why did the story begin here? Why did we have to see her end first? From a narrative standpoint, starting at a grave is an act of profound empathy. If we had met River's song in the correct order, meeting a young, energetic Melody Pond and watching her grow, we might have just seen her as another companion. We might have grown cynical about her mystery. But by showing us her death first, the writers ensured that every single interaction she has with the Doctor from that point forward is tinged with the sunset of the library. When she meets the 11th Doctor, or the 12th, and she laughs, or she flirts, or she says spoilers, we aren't just seeing a clever woman. We are seeing a woman who knows exactly where the tracks might end. We are seeing the bravery of a person who chooses to love, even when she knows the goodbye is coming. This is the Cassandra trope, elevated into a romantic epic. Cassandra was the Trojan priestess, cursed to see the future, but to be never believed. River is the woman who sees the future and has to live it in reverse. She's the only person in the universe who truly understands the Doctor, and she's the only person he can never truly keep. The silence in the library isn't just the absence of noise. It's the silence of the unspoken. It's the things River cannot tell the Doctor because it would break the timeline. It's the silence of a woman holding her tongue while her heart is breaking. As the Doctor stands over her body in the library, he says time can be rewritten. River responds, "Not all of it, not this." This dialogue is the heart of the conflict. The Doctor believes he can solve any problem, beat any clock, rewrite any tragedy. River accepts the end of her story. She understands that for her story to be beautiful, it must have an end. Her tragedy isn't that she dies. Her tragedy is she's the architect of her own ending. She creates the Doctor who will eventually save her, but she has to pay for her salvation with her physical life. In the Forest of the Dead, the Doctor realizes he gave her his screwdriver, the one he hadn't made yet, specifically to save her. It is a gift from his future to her past. It is the ultimate in humanized tech. The sonic screwdriver isn't just a tool in this episode. It's a love letter. It's the Doctor's way of saying, "I don't know you yet, but I will love you enough to try and cheat death for you." So, is this a tragedy? On the surface it is. A woman dies, forgotten by the man she loves most. But if we look deeper, it's a triumph of the spirit. River Song is the only person who truly tamed the Doctor. She didn't do it by being a companion. She did it by being his equal. She's the only one who walked the same path he did, just in reverse. In the library, the forest of the dead becomes a garden of remembrance. River's story tells us that love isn't about how much time you have. It's about what you do with the time you're given, even if that time is out of order. She proves that a life lived in reverse is no less meaningful than a life lived forward. So, as the library is abandoned and the Vashta Narada take over, we are left with the image of a blue book, a diary full of secrets, heartbreaks, and spoilers. River didn't just die in the library, she became a legend. To understand how that legend was forged, we have to go back. We have to go back to the beginning of her life. We have to go back to the child who was born in the heart of a time nexus. But for now, remember the final look she gave the 10th Doctor. That look of absolute, devastating love for a man who didn't even know her. That's the bravest thing that any human or Time Lord has ever done. So, welcome back to the beginning. The diary is opening and the first page is blank. To understand why the library carries such a profound weight, we have to look at the beginning. In traditional fiction, the birth of a child is the ultimate symbol of hope. It's a narrative reset button. But in the story of River Song, birth is a declaration of war. It is where the philosophy of predestination takes its most cruel and visceral form. River's story begins at the events of A Good Man Goes to War. We aren't watching a sci-fi plot, we are witnessing the weaponization of love. We are forced to ask a terrifying question. If you were born as a bullet aimed at a specific heart, can you ever truly say your love is your own? At the Battle of Demon's Run, the Doctor behaves like a classic epic hero. He assembles an army and wins the day. But the philosophy of the story is this: winning the battle is his greatest mistake. As the poet warns, demons run when a good man goes to war. While the Doctor is busy being a general, his enemies are busy being architects of a human soul. This is the tragedy of Melody Pond's birth. She is born in a crossfire. Her destiny is manufactured in a lab by the Kovarian chapter, using the Doctor's greatest friendships to facilitate his downfall. Because she was conceived in the TARDIS, she possesses Time Lord DNA, a child of the stars stolen to become an assassin. Her existence subverts the Chosen One trope. Usually, a child with special powers is chosen by fate to save the world. Melody is chosen by a cult to kill the Doctor. The true heart of this tragedy is found in the wreckage after the battle. The Doctor has lost. Amy's child has been replaced by a slurry of flesh, and the Doctor is standing in the ruins of his own reputation. He is consumed by a cold, righteous fury until River Song arrives. Up until this point, the Doctor viewed River as a puzzle to be solved, but standing over an ancient Gallifreyan crib, the puzzle becomes a person. River looks at the crib, her crib, with a mixture of sorrow and profound love. She knows she is the child they just lost. To watch the Doctor's body language shift from a defensive pointed stance to a trembling realization, she guides his hand to the Gallifreyan symbols on the cradle, and the air leaves the room. He isn't looking at a mysterious traveller anymore. He's looking at the soul of a child he failed to save. For River and the Doctor, this is the true beginning, their shared grief. The Doctor realizes she hasn't been stalking him through time. She's been finding her way home. He stops running from her mystery and begins running toward her life. However, that life is immediately stolen. As we move from the cradle to 1969 America, the philosophy shifts to the erasure of self. The silence are post-hypnotic existentialism. They shape your world without you ever knowing you're being controlled. For a young Melody Pond, the silence represent the ultimate theft of agency. She's raised in a vacuum of memory, conditioned and molded by creatures she cannot remember seeing. Her identity is not built on experiences, but by the absence of them. The silence want her to be a tabula rasa, a blank slate, so they can write a single command upon her: kill the Doctor. By stripping away her memory, they attempt to strip away her capacity for love. The theft of agency is physically manifested by the astronaut suit. It is a metaphor for the cage of fate. The suit is life support, but it's also a prison. It moves on its own. The child inside is just a passenger. This is a brilliant exploration of structural determinism. Often, customers in stories feel like they're making choices, but they're actually following a script. Here, that script is physical. The suit forces her to walk to the lake. It forces her to raise the weapon. But even in the depths of this indoctrination, the soul resists the suit. We see a child crying out for help, looking for a connection that her programming forbids. It's the first spark of the triumph we finally see in the library. The most challenging concept introduced here is the fixed point in time. We see the Doctor die at Lake Silencio, and in fiction, a fixed point is the ultimate enemy of free will. It places an immense burden on the love story. How do you build a relationship when your first interaction is her being forced to execute you? This subverts the meet-cute trope entirely, replacing it with a meet fatal. The philosophy of the fixed point forces the characters to look for meaning in the margins. If the ending is fixed, the quality of the time spent getting there becomes the only thing that matters. River Song's love for the Doctor is not a sparkly fairy tale destiny. It is an act of radical transcendence. It is earned through the fire of her own trauma. She has to unlearn everything she was taught and fight her own biology. She has to look at a man she was told was a demon and see a good man. By the end of this arc, she is alone and scared in a New York alleyway, but she is finally free of the suit. She is a blank slate once more, but this time she is the one holding the pen. River proves that if you are born in a war and programmed to be a weapon, you can still choose to become a storyteller. And as Melody Pond becomes River Song, she begins to turn the spoilers of her own life into a diary of adventures. Every time she says, "Hello, sweetie," in the future, she is reclaiming a life that was almost lost to the silence. In the landscape of fiction, we are often comforted by the chosen one. From King Arthur to Luke Skywalker, we understand the story. A hero born with a grand destiny to save the world. But the story of River Song offers a chilling inversion of this trope. What happens when the chosen one is not an agent of salvation, but a meticulously engineered assassin? This is the narrative pivot of Let's Kill Hitler. It's the story of a weapon discovering it has a heart, and a soul deciding to break its own programming. When we meet the adult version of Melody Pond, first as Mel's, and then as the River Song we recognize, she is the antithesis of a hero. While a traditional protagonist struggles to accept their greatness, Melody struggles to reject her own malice. The silence did not just give her a destiny, they gave her a directive. As the chosen assassin, her entire biological and psychological makeup was tuned to perfection to the assassination of the Doctor. In Berlin, 1938, she regenerates into the form we know, and we see a soul. She is a woman born into a narrative trap. Her destiny is not a noble calling, but a parasitic attempt to override her humanity. This introduces a terrifying question. Can love exist if it was programmed? The silence weaponized intimacy, using her connection to the Doctor as the very lure that would bring him to his knees. In Berlin, the romance begins as a parody. River uses the trappings of a love story, the pout, the flirtation, the aesthetic of the femme fatale to deliver a death blow. She delivers a Judas kiss, a biological weapon that begins to kill the Doctor. This is a brilliant subversion. By turning the most iconic symbol of romance into a weapon, the story forces us to look at the dark side of the star-crossed lovers trope. Here, the forbidden nature of their love is literal. If she loves him, he dies. But as the Doctor lies dying, we see the first crack in the assassin's armor. He doesn't fight her. He treats her with a kindness she hasn't earned. He uses the power of narrative identity to save himself, asking her to find River Song and give her a message. By telling her who she could be, he gives her the strength to reject who she was made to be. The most significant philosophical moment of this metamorphosis is when River chooses to save the Doctor by giving up her remaining regenerations. In the context of a Chosen One story, the hero usually gains power as they progress. River does the opposite. She sheds her power to gain her humanity. A Time Lord's regenerations are infinite. By spending all her lives on one man, River performs a secular baptism. She washes away the weapon and becomes a woman. This reveals a fundamental truth about their bond. True love is a sacrifice of agency. It is the moment you value one's existence, another's existence, more than your own. By becoming mortal, River becomes the Doctor's equal. She is no longer a project of the silence. She is a woman who made a choice. Mortality, it turns out, is the prerequisite for love. To truly love, you must be vulnerable. You must be able to lose. If Let's Kill Hitler was about the weapon finding its heart, the wedding of River Song is the heart that refusing to follow the script. At Lake Silencio, the universe demands that River must kill the Doctor. It's a fixed point, an ultimate script from which there is no escape. But River, now a fully realized individual, says no. The resulting chaos, where history happens all at once, is the literal manifestation of a narrative breakdown. The universe falls apart because her love is so strong and the character refuses to play her role. This is the ultimate act of romantic defiance. She isn't just willing to die for him, she's willing to let time itself die for him. In the heart of this temporal storm, River delivers the most vital lines of her life. I can't let you die without knowing you are loved, by so many and so much, and by no one more than me. This reframes the entire conflict. The silence viewed the Doctor's death as a cosmic necessity. The Doctor viewed it as a lonely sacrifice, but River views it as a tragedy of unwitnessed worth. She rejects the fixed point because she refuses to let him end without the absolute certainty of being loved. She becomes the advocate for the human soul. She argues that love is a more fundamental law of the universe than time itself. To fix the broken universe, the Doctor realizes the only way forward is through absolute transparency. The wedding is not just a ceremony, it's a narrative resolution. By whispering his name to her and bringing her into his secret, they create a new fixed point, built on mutual truth. The wedding is a triumph over the tragedy of the assassin. The woman born to kill him is now narratively and spiritually bound to him. Her declaration that he is loved by no one more than me becomes the new foundation of the Doctor's existence. He doesn't just survive the lake because of a clever trick with a robot. He survives because River Song gave him a reason why. As we wrap up this metamorphosis, we see the complete transformation of a trope. We see that the chosen one can be a victim of cruel design. But love is the glitch in the matrix that the silence could not account for. They thought they could build a person out of programming. They forgot she was a child of the TARDIS and the daughter of the girl who waited. River Song's love is an act of evolution. She evolved past her biological imperatives and her own immortality. She found a way to live in the middle of a story that forced her into a beginning and an end. Every time she goes back to her cell at the storm cage, she isn't a prisoner. She is a free woman waiting for the next page of her diary to be written. She has turned the tragedy of her birth into the triumph of her marriage, proving that you are not what you were made to be. You are what you choose to love. In the narrative of the Chosen One, there is usually a clear trajectory: birth, realization of a power, a struggle, and then a final victory. But when the Chosen One is an assassin, a weapon designed by a cult to dismantle the very fabric of time, the trajectory becomes an Ouroboros. We move from the wedding of the assassin to the wedding of her parents. We move from the death of the universe to the moment of her own conception. This is the bridge between the woman who was a weapon and the woman who becomes a legend. It is found in the wreckage of the universe during the events of the Pandorica Opens and the Big Bang. This is the moment where the love story stops being a series of events and starts being a physical law of the universe. When we see River in the vicinity of the Pandorica, we are seeing the inmate phase, but with a deep philosophical layer. She is no longer the girl in the astronaut suit, yet she is not quite the professor in the library. She's in the middle of her transformation. The Pandorica was built as a prison for the Doctor, intended to stop the total collapse of time. Every species in the universe came together to trap the chosen victim. And who was there to witness it? The chosen assassin. There is a profound narrative irony here. The Silent spent lifetimes engineering River to be the only thing capable of killing the Doctor. Yet, in the moment of his greatest peril, she is the only one capable of standing by him. The weapon has been repurposed. Philosophically, this represents the transcendence of function. In most fiction, if a sword is forged to kill a king, it cannot be anything else. But River Song is a sword that decided to become a shield. As the universe begins to erase itself and the stars go out one by one, River is left alone in the TARDIS as it burns. This is the ultimate test of her heart. She is trapped in a loop of her own destruction, yet her only focus is ensuring the Doctor has the tools he needs to reboot reality. This isn't just love. This is ontological loyalty. She is protecting the man who gives her life meaning, even as the universe that gave her life existence is disappearing. The most mind-bending exploration of love in fiction occurs at the end of the Big Bang. After the Doctor flies the Pandorica into the heart of the exploding TARDIS, he resets a universe, and we find ourselves at a wedding. But it isn't River's wedding. It's the wedding of Amy Pond to Rory Williams. It's the moment where the Chosen One is inverted. In a traditional narrative, the hero is born, and then they go on an adventure. In the story of River Song, the adventure is the cause of the birth. Because River traveled back to the Doctor to help lead him to Amy and Rory, and because she facilitated the circumstances of their travels, she is essentially the architect of her own conception. She is the chosen one who chose her own parents. When Amy and Rory retreat to the TARDIS on their wedding night, we realize that River Song is being conceived in the heart of the time vortex. This suggests that her love for the Doctor is literally in her blood. She wasn't just born to love him in a romanticized metaphorical sense. She was biologically forged in the heat of the very machine he uses to save the world. This changes the nature of the love story entirely. It moves it away from destiny and into the realm of causal romanticism. Her existence is a gift she gave to herself by being the woman the Doctor needed her to be. It is a love story that functions as a closed loop of grace. She ensures her parents fall in love so that she can be born, so that she can save the man who will eventually show her parents how to fall in love. It is a beautiful, recursive miracle. It is at Amy and Rory's wedding that the Doctor gives River the Blue Diary. Up until this point, River has been character defined by what she must do. She must kill the Doctor. She must go to the storm cage. She must save the universe. But when he hands her this diary, mostly empty, she is signaling the transition into the next phase of her life. The diary is a physical manifestation of her agency. For a lover, it is a record of moments. By the Doctor giving her the diary, she is inviting him to be the co-author of her life. And this is where the untold adventures begin. In the philosophy of love in fiction, we often focus on the big moments. The first kiss, the tragic death, the grand sacrifice. But the Blue Diary represents the poetry of the mundane. It represents the happy middle. It represents the thousands of nights they spend together that the show never explored. The picnics on Asgard, meeting Jim the Fish, and the quiet moments in between the chaos. This is the triumph I want to explore. The tragedy is that she dies in the library. The triumph is that she fills a whole book with the reasons why that death was worth it. She turned her life into a memoir. By the end of this arc, the power dynamic has shifted entirely. In the beginning, the Doctor was the legendary Time Lord, and River was the mysterious, mercenarial character. But as we move into the untold adventures, River becomes the one with authority. She is the one with the diary. She is the one who knows the spoilers. In the philosophy of their relationship, knowledge is a form of caretaking. Because she knows his future, she's able to guide him, protect him, and love him in a way that no one else can. She is the only person in the universe who can look at the lonely god and see a husband. This subverts the chosen one trope by making her the more mature and more informed partner. Usually the chosen one is the student, and the mentor is the one with the ancient knowledge. But River is both. She's both the student of his past and a mentor of his future. This creates a love story that is uniquely equalizing. They are both gods in their own way. The Doctor as a Time Lord with his TARDIS, and River with her knowledge and her lived experiences. They meet in the middle, in the pages of a Blue Diary, where time doesn't matter as much as the time spent with the person sitting across from you. As we look past the wedding of Amy and Rory, we have to recognize the philosophical defiance at the heart of their romance. The universe is a place of entropy. Things fall apart, stars die, stories end. The Silents try to use that entropy to destroy the Doctor by using River as their weapon. But River and the Doctor used love to create a pocket of permanence. The diary doesn't merely record their lives, it preserves them. When River is gone, the diary remains. Even when the Doctor regenerates and forgets the feel of her hand, the words remain. And this is something I wanted to explore with this love story. It was a way that they screamed no at the entire universe. River Song is the story of River Song is that of a woman who was told she was a weapon. She responded by becoming a chronicler of life. She took the fixed point of her own tragic origin, and she stuffed the space between with so much joy and adventure that tragedy became secondary. As we move forward, we are no longer looking at Melody Pond, the girl in the astronaut suit, or the assassin in Berlin. We are going to look at the Professor River Song. We are looking at the woman who served her time in the storm cage, not as a punishment, but as a period of waiting. She is a traveller in a departure lounge, waiting for the Doctor to land his TARDIS so they can go on another adventure that hasn't been written yet. The untold adventures are the soul of the story. They are proof that even in a scripted universe, there is room for improvisation. They are the happy middles that make the sad endings bearable. And as the Doctor looked at the blank pages of the blue diary at Amy and Rory's wedding, he isn't looking at a book of spoilers. He's looking at the map of a heart he hasn't begun to explore. He is looking at the woman who chose him long before he chose her. This is the ultimate philosophy of River Song. You are not who you were made to be. You are what you choose to love. And River Song chose to love a man who would give her the stars, even if she had to spend her life chasing them through a broken timeline. In the narrative philosophy of love stories, there is a common trope: the manic pixie dream girl, or the enigmatic savior, a character who exists to solely jar the protagonist out of their comfort zone and teach them how to live. For a long time, the Doctor saw River through these lenses. She was the woman who broke into his life with a wink and a spoiler. But in The Angels Take Manhattan, the veil is stripped away. We see the reality of what it means to love a lonely God. This is how I wanted to explore this love story, not as a series of grand adventures, but the silent, bone-deep endurance required to be the person who stays standing while everyone else falls. When we encounter River in 1930s New York, she is operating under the pseudonym Melody Malone. She has become a private investigator, a writer of noir fiction. This is a brilliant evolution. Noir is the genre of the weary, the cynical, and the observant. It is a genre for people who have seen too much, but still have a job to do. River Song has become the ultimate noir protagonist. She is no longer a chaotic force. She is a woman who has spent years in a prison cell, years traveling the stars, and years filling a blue diary with the weight of a husband who is perpetually younger than her soul. The Doctor, in this era, is at his most childlike. He is vibrant, energetic, and emotionally volatile. He loves Amy and Rory with a fierce, possessive love of a child for his favourite toys. River, conversely, loves the Doctor with the love of a woman who has already seen the end of the world and is just trying to make the present bearable. This creates a fascinating narrative inversion. Usually the god is the mature one, the mortal the impulsive one. But here, River is the adult in the room. She's the one who understands that fixed points cannot be bargained with. She is the one who knows that stories eventually have to end. The most profound moment in this chapter occurs in the quiet aftermath of a struggle. River was captured by a collector. Her wrist was being held by a weeping angel. The Doctor arrives to save her. But, due to a fixed point, he demands that she removes her hand without breaking it herself. As a result, she ends up breaking her own wrist, but she hides it. She wraps it in her sleeve. She smiles, and she continues to play the part of the flirtatious detective. When the Doctor realizes she is hurt, the dialogue they share is perhaps the most honest distillation of their entire relationship at that point. The Doctor: "Why did you lie to me?" River: "When one's in love with an ageless god who insists on the face of a 12-year-old, one does one's best to hide the damage." The Doctor: "It must hurt." River: "Yes, the wrist is pretty bad too." This is the philosophy of protective asynchronity. In a love story between equals, you share your pain. But when you love someone who is ageless, you begin to feel that your own pain is a burden they shouldn't have to carry. River hides her broken wrist, not because she is stoic, but because she knows the Doctor is emotionally fragile. He is a man who insists on the face of a 12-year-old, because he cannot handle the reality of his own age. He avoids the damage. River is the damage. She's the person who has lived through the prison, the brainwashing, and the reverse order heartbreak. Her line, "The wrist is pretty bad too," is a staggering admission. It suggests the physical pain of a shattered bone is nothing compared to the emotional pain of being the one who has to stay strong for a god. This is the triumph of her character, the ability to absorb the trauma of the universe so the man she loves can keep his wonder. As the episode reaches its climax in the graveyard, we see the ultimate expression of this protective love. Amy and Rory, River's own parents, are taken by the weeping angel. They are sent back in time and lost to the Doctor forever. The Doctor collapses. He screams, he pleads. He's a man being torn apart by loss. This is the moment where the hero is rendered completely useless by his own heart. And at this moment, what does River do? She does not cry. She does not scream for her parents. She turns her back on the grieving Doctor and stares at the weeping angel. She maintains absolute, unwavering eye contact. Philosophically, this is the most important image of her entire arc. The weeping angels are lonely assassins, who can only move when they're not being watched. They represent the predatory nature of time itself, always creeping up on you until you blink, the moment you look away. By refusing to blink, River is literally holding time still. She is an anchor that allows the Doctor to have his moment of grief. If she were to turn around and comfort him, if she were to succumb to her own emotions, the angel would strike and they would both be lost. This is stoic love. It's the love of a person who holds a door shut while the other person escapes. It's the love that says, "I will deal with the monster so you can deal with the sadness." She is the guardian of his grieving process. She is the reason he is safe enough to fall apart. Even after Amy and Rory are gone, River's work isn't finished. She is the one who has to tell the Doctor how to move on. She is the one who has to write the book to ensure the spoilers are in place so the loop can be closed. This explores the idea of narrative healing. River knows that for the Doctor, the story is the only thing that is real. If she can turn the loss of Amy and Rory into a published book, with a clear beginning, middle, and end, she can give him closure his heart cannot find on its own. Think about the cost to her. She is writing the story of her parents' disappearance. She is documenting her own tragedy to make it palatable for him. This is the ultimate sacrifice. She is the editor of his life, cutting out the sharpest edges so he doesn't cut himself. Love is not a feeling in this situation, it's a service. Because she is mortal, she understands the value of a single human life in a way the Doctor sometimes forgets. She understands that while he will live for another 1,000 years, her parents only had one life, and they spent it well. River's maturity allows her to see the beauty in it. The Doctor only sees the tragedy. River sees that her parents lived a full, happy life together in the past. She sees the happy middle that the Doctor misses because he is so focused on the sad ending. This is how she hides the damage. She presents him with a version of the truth he can handle. She becomes a bridge between his life and the finite reality of those he loves. She interprets their mortality. Usually, the Doctor's companions are there to be saved by him. They are there to learn from him. But the angels take Manhattan. The roles are completely reversed. River is the one saving the Doctor. She's saving his mind, his sanity, and his future. By being the one who doesn't blink, she's being forced to be the one to hide the damage. This subverts the Chosen One concept we discussed earlier. The Chosen One is incapacitated. The assassin is the one who has become the savior. But she doesn't do it with a sonic screwdriver or a grand speech. She does it with the quiet, exhausting strength of a woman who loves and knows exactly how much weight he can carry. I want you to picture River in that graveyard. The wind is blowing, the sun is setting over Manhattan, and her husband is sobbing. She wants to turn around. She wants to hold him. She wants to cry for her parents. But she doesn't. She keeps her eyes open. She keeps her gaze fixed on the weeping angel. In this way, she is the perfect partner. The realization that sometimes the greatest act of love is not a kiss or a wedding vow. It's simply refusing to blink while the world is trying to take everything away. River is a woman who looked time in the eyes and didn't flinch. She's the one who realized that when you love a god, you have to carry the weight. As we move on, we end up in Darillium, the perfect night, where the ageless god grows up enough to see the woman that has been standing beside him all along. We move to the Singing Towers. To understand the maturity of this love story, we must move past the fireworks of weddings and the trauma of origins. We have to look at the happy middle, that space in a relationship where the mystery is replaced by a deep, weary, and profound understanding. It's the era of the Blue Diary. It's the period where the chosen assassin has fully transitioned into the professor, and their story becomes a study in emotional stewardship. In the landscape of fiction, we are often sold the first meeting or the final sacrifice as the most important moments. But for River Song and the Doctor, the most significant beats happen in the quiet intervals. This is the era of the untold adventures. To understand the narrative philosophy of a love story in its final, most resonant form, we must travel to the edge of a cliff on a planet called Darillium. But to get there, we first have to survive the crashing of a ship and a heart-shattering realization. In The Husbands of River Song, the dramatic irony of the series is flipped. For the first time, the Doctor, in his 12th incarnation, knows exactly who River is, while she has no idea who he is. We see River Song in the wild, reckless, mercenary, and deeply lonely. She is living in the meantime, surrounding herself with husbands and adventures, but she is fundamentally alone. The emotional core of this chapter happens during the ship's interrogation. Cornered by her enemies and believing the Doctor is nowhere near, River delivers a monologue that is perhaps the most devastatingly honest assessment of their relationship. She argues the Doctor is too vast, too cosmic, and too legendary for something as small as reciprocal love. She says, "You don't expect the sunset to admire you back." This is a profound piece of romantic existentialism. River has reconciled herself to the asymmetry of the divine. In her mind, she is a disciple of his legend, not a partner in his life. She loves him like one loves a star, something that provides light and warmth to the universe, but is too grand to notice a single flower on a single planet. She has turned her greatest insecurity into a shield. She believes that if she believes he doesn't love her, she can never be disappointed when he isn't there to save her. But the narrative philosophy of Doctor Who rejects this cold celestial detachment. The Doctor is standing right next to her, listening to his wife describe him as cold, unfeeling force of nature. He realizes that his own lonely god persona has accidentally convinced the woman he loves that she is invisible to him. And so, moments before the ship screams toward impact, he performs his greatest rescue. He doesn't save her from the crash. He saves her from the belief she is unloved. When she finally looks into his eyes and realizes who he is, the "hello, sweetie" that follows isn't a flirtatious catchphrase. It's a sigh of relief. It is the moment the star steps down from the sky to stand in the fire with her. The philosophy of the sunset is proven wrong. The Doctor is sentimental enough and in love enough to be exactly where she is. This moment of recognition leads them, finally, to the Singing Towers of Darillium. The towers are the perfect metaphor for the end of their journey. They are two massive rock formations in a canyon, and when the wind blows through them, they sing. Philosophically, the music is produced by friction. Their love was never a smooth romance. It was a collision of two stubborn, ancient souls. Like the wind through the towers, their relationship only makes music because of the gaps, the obstacles, and the resistance they faced. On Darillium, the friction finally turns into a sustained note of peace. The most radical choice in this story is the nature of their final date. When River learns that a night on Darillium lasts 24 years, she's overwhelmed. In most fiction, the final night is a few hours of stolen time. But here, the narrative grants them subjective permanence. By making the night last 2 decades, the story provides a happy ending inside a tragedy. For the audience, the episode ends in an hour. For Doctor and River, they live an entire lifetime together in one night. This is the ultimate defiance of the linear clock. Love doesn't happen in the number of days. It happens in the depth of the night. On Darillium, they finally put down the diary. They don't need to check spoilers, because there is no next time. There is only the now. It is during this long night the Doctor builds a screwdriver we see River use in the library. He is preparing her for her sacrifice, but he is also ensuring that she has the means to survive in the data core. This redefines the hero trope. Usually, the hero saves the damsel from the dragon. Here, the hero accepts that death is inevitable, so he builds the damsel a shield that will carry her through the fire. It is a mature, heartbreaking act of emotional stewardship. This leads me to perhaps what I consider to be the most important part of their love story and their relationship. What we like to call the happy middle philosophy. As the sun finally begins to rise after 24 years, the blue diary is full. There are no more blank pages. River's song started as a weapon with no name, born into a war she didn't understand. She ends as a woman who is full. She has wrestled with destiny and won. She took a tragic looping timeline and stuffed the space between the beginning and the end with so much joy the tragedy became secondary. The Doctor tells her that happily ever after is a lie, but he offers a counter-philosophy. The middle is what matters. The value of Darillium is not diminished because it ends. The joy was real, and the reality is fixed in the fabric of time. As River walks toward the library, she isn't walking toward her death. She is walking toward her legend, carrying the memory of a man who spent 24 years proving that a sunset can admire you back. So there's something nice about the happy middle. We place so much emphasis on how things start and how things end, especially in Western media and philosophy, that perhaps we should consider the joy in the middle. Those experiences that build us and sustain us and give us joy. And maybe that's what we should focus on, the journey and the time we spend with the people we love, as opposed to how things might start or how things might end. So, as the sun begins to rise on Darillium after 2 decades, the diary is full. The full diary represents a completed life. River Song started, started as a weapon, and she ends as a professor, a wife, and a legend, with a book full of adventures that changed the course of history. River Song stands as the ultimate example of a character who wrestled with destiny and won. To understand the final shimmering layer of a love story in fiction, you must step beyond the boundaries of flesh and blood. And in the narrative philosophy of Doctor Who, between River and the Doctor, even death is not a full stop. It is merely a change in the medium of the message. This brings us to the haunting and ethereal presence of River Song during the journey to Trenzalore in the name of the Doctor. Though this episode was filmed years before her final night on Darillium, chronologically it represents the ultimate postscript of her life. Here we're going to explore the philosophy of the spectral guardian and what happens when a love story becomes a haunt. By this point in the narrative, the biological River Song has been dead for centuries. She gave her life in the library to save a version of the Doctor who did not know her name. In most fiction, the story would end here. But because the Doctor saved her consciousness into the library's data core, River persists as a digital ghost. The philosophy here is one of persistence through data. In the 51st century, the library is a monument to all human knowledge, and River is one of its living ghosts. A digital spectre who exists in a state of permanent memory. A profound way to explore a love story as a record who refuses to be deleted. When River appears to Clara Oswald via a psychic link during the conference call of the Paternoster gang, she is not a ghost in the supernatural sense. She is a projection. She is an echo of a woman who loved a man so much she found a way to bridge the gap between a computer server in the future and a graveyard in the past. This introduces the concept of trans-temporal intimacy. Their love has become so powerful that it no longer requires a body to function. It exists as a signal in the static of the universe. For a majority of the name of the Doctor, the audience is led to believe that River is invisible and inaudible to the Doctor. She walks beside him, comments on his choices, and tries to guide him, and yet he appears to ignore her entirely. This creates a fascinating narrative tension. On the surface, it seemed like a tragedy. The woman who gave everything for him is now a ghost who cannot even get his attention. But the philosophy of this invisibility is rooted in the burden of grief. If you watch the episode again after the final reveal, you notice the Doctor is reacting to her in every scene. He flinches when she speaks. He pauses when she stands in his way. He hears her in every hallway in the TARDIS and every corner in the graveyard of Trenzalore. He isn't ignoring her because he can't see her. He is ignoring her because he cannot bear the fact that he can. This is a deep dive into the psychology of loss. Sometimes when we lose someone, the memory of them is so vivid it feels like they are still in the room. For the Doctor, this is literal. River is so much a part of his mind and his heart that his own psychic abilities are pulling her projection into his reality. He is a man haunted by a wife who refuses to leave him to face his death alone. The journey to Trenzalore leads them to the Doctor's tomb, a massive dying TARDIS that serves as the monument to his final battle. To enter the tomb, one must speak the Doctor's name. It is the ultimate fixed point of the silence. The cult that spent centuries trying to prevent this moment. They believe that the name was a weapon that would unlock the end of time. But in the narrative philosophy of this love story, the name is not a weapon. It is a key that belongs to the one person he trusts most. When the Doctor is unable to speak the name himself, it is the spectral River who whispers it. She is the only one who knows it. Not because she stole it, but because he gave it to her. This is a beautiful exploration of trust. The most dangerous secret in the universe is safe because it is held by a woman who loves him beyond the grave. By opening the tomb for him, River is performing one last act of service. She is the gatekeeper of his legacy. She allows him to enter his own grave so he can save his friends, proving that her role in his life was never about the assassination she was born for, but about the preservation of the man he became. The climax of their interaction occurs after the danger has passed. In the quiet ruins of the graveyard, the Doctor finally acknowledges her presence, and the resulting dialogue is some of the most heartbreaking and honest writing in the history of fiction. River asks how he is able to see her, given she is just an echo. The Doctor's response is a masterclass of permanent connection. He says, "You are always here to me, and I always listen, and I can always see you." This is love in its purest form, a state of permanent awareness. To the Doctor, River Song is not a person who lived and died. She is a constant frequency in his life. He doesn't need a psychic link to see her because she is already etched into the perception of reality. When River asks why he didn't speak to her, he admits, "Because I thought it would hurt too much." River, with the stoicism of a woman who has already faced her end, replies that she could have coped. But the Doctor corrects her. "No, I thought it would hurt me, and I was right." This is a profoundly human admission from the Time Lord. It shows that even a godlike being is vulnerable to the simple agonizing pain of missing someone. His silence wasn't a lack of love. It was a symptom of it. He was trying to protect himself from a reality of her death by pretending she wasn't there. Even as he felt her hand, it explores the idea that grief is a form of sight. We see the people we love in the places they should be, and the pain comes from the gap between vision and the reality. As they stand together in the shadow of his tomb, the Doctor reflects on the nature of their existence. He tells her there is a time to live and a time to sleep. He calls her an echo, comparing her to Clara and to everyone else who eventually fades into the narrative of history. "You should have faded by now," he says. The philosophy of the fading echo is a meditation on the natural order of stories. Everything has an end. Even a digital ghost cannot haunt the world forever. But River's refusal to fade is a testament to her agency. She stayed because she knew he wasn't ready to say goodbye. She stayed because the Doctor needed to be told it was okay to let go. In this moment, River becomes a mentor once again. She's the one who has already crossed the finish line. She's reaching back to pull him through his own grief. This is the ultimate inversion of the companion. She is the one with the wisdom of the afterlife, and he is the student who is afraid of the dark. When the Doctor asks how she can still be there if the link is broken, River gives her signature response: spoilers. In the beginning, spoilers was a way to hide plot points and future adventures. But here, in the graveyard of Trenzalore, the word takes a metaphysical weight. It is no longer about what happens in the next episode. It's about the mystery of what lies beyond the grave. By saying spoilers, River is hinting that even her death is not the final word. She is suggesting there is a logic to her persistence that the Doctor doesn't even understand yet. It is a final act of flirtatious defiance against the finality of the grave. She is maintaining her mystery until the very last second. She tells him, "Goodbye, sweetie," and begins to fade away. This is the true end of their story. It is a goodbye that happened long after the funeral, in a place that doesn't exist yet, between a man who is about to die and a woman who has been dead for centuries. This phase of their love story is the final proof. It shows love story in fiction doesn't have to be limited by the lifespan of characters. River began her life as a weapon designed to kill the Doctor. She ended her life as a hero who saved him. And even in the afterlife, she became a guardian who watched over him when he was at his lowest. The journey to Trenzalore is often seen as a dark chapter, but the presence of River makes it a redemptive memory. She is the proof the Doctor's life meant something. Even if he was loved by a woman this much who can still see him from across the veil of time and the veil of death, he is not the lonely god he pretends to be. This is the philosophy of the happy middle taken to its absolute extreme. Even in the tomb, Even as a digital ghost from the library, there is a middle. There is a conversation, there is a kiss, and there is a moment of recognition. As River fades away for the last time, she leaves the Doctor with a sense of closure. He has finally acknowledged her. He has finally admitted how much it hurts to see her, and in doing so, he has finally allowed her to sleep. It is a process of learning how to say goodbye. River's narrative is a circle that never quite closes. It just spirals outward. She is the daughter, the assassin, the wife, the professor, and finally an echo. In each phase, she is redefined by what it meant to love the Doctor. But it is in this final spectral appearance she proves the most important point. Love is the only thing not subject to the laws of time. A name can be a key, a diary can be a map, and a ghost can be a guardian. But at the center of it all is a man and a woman who found a way to be always here for each other, even when the stars went out and the towers stopped singing. The story of River Song ends as a whisper in a graveyard, but it echoes forever in the hearts of those who listen. She is a woman who lived 1,000 stories in the gaps of a single one, and she proved that as long as someone is listening, no one is ever truly gone. To truly grasp the narrative philosophy of River Song, we must finally look at the 1,000-year gap in the town of Christmas on the planet Trenzalore. We see this in the episode Time of the Doctor. It is the period where the Doctor, in his 11th incarnation, stands as the lone sentinel against the combined might of the universe. In most fictional arcs, a 1,000-year siege would lead to a character's total psychological dissolution. We should see a man who has lost his identity to the weary grind of war. Instead, the Doctor remains remarkably static and stable. He remains the Doctor. There is a profound theory that I have that explains this stability. River Song never left. After the event of the Doctor's tomb, where he finally acknowledged her digital presence, and he told her she is always here and he is always listening, their connection reached a state of metaphysical permanence. Even though she appeared to fade, the philosophy of their love suggests that she remained as his invisible companion in the millennium that he spent defending the town of Christmas. In a town covered by a truth field where no one can lie, the Doctor's greatest truth was his wife. The truth field of Trenzalore is a unique narrative device. It strips away the masks and the performative bravado of the Time Lord. To survive 1,000 years in such a field without losing one's mind requires an incredible degree of internal honesty. If River's echo remained by his side, she would have functioned as his psychological anchor. She was the only person in existence who knew every version of him. As he aged from a young man into a frail, weathered protector, the digital echo of River Song would be a constant frequency that kept him aligned with his own heart. She was the one who could remind him of who he was when the weight of centuries became too heavy. This is a beautiful way to explore a love story in fiction, not as two people holding hands in the sun, but a silent, invisible presence that provides the strength to stand tall in the snow. He wasn't talking to himself for those 10 centuries. He was talking to her. The most staggering philosophical irony of this period is that the town of Christmas is the birthplace of the very nightmare that created River Song. As the Doctor defends the planet, we witness the evolution of the papal mainframe into the Church of the Silence. We see the confessional priests, who will eventually become the terrifying creatures known as the Silence. When Tasha Lem pronounces the words, "Silence will fall," she isn't just making a threat. She is inadvertently starting the time loop that defines River's entire existence. It is here, in the Doctor's present, the Order is formed to travel back to his past, to kidnap Melody Pond. The very enemies the Doctor are fighting are the architects of his marriage. This creates a narrative philosophy of recursive sacrifice. The Doctor stays on Trenzalore to save the town, and in doing so, he becomes the catalyst for the silence to go back and create the woman who will eventually come to Trenzalore to help him save it. It is a closed loop of cause and effect, where love is the only constant. River Song is a child of this war, a weapon of this church, and the lover of this man. Because River is an echo during this time, she is a perfect companion for a static character. The Doctor cannot leave Christmas. He is fixed in place by his own morality. River, being a presence tied to his mind, is the only one who can truly share that stasis. They exist together in a bubble of frozen time, surrounded by a universe that is desperately trying to break in. This is the ultimate evolution of the Chosen One trope. Usually, the hero moves through the world to change it. On Trenzalore, the hero stays to protect it. And this growth is not external, but internal. The presence of River's echo explains why he never becomes a tyrant or a monster during the long centuries of the siege. She is the conscience that whispers in the truth field. When we eventually see the Doctor on his deathbed, old and frail, he isn't a man who has been alone. He's a man who has spent 1,000 years in the company of a ghost who loved him. The tragedy of the library was not the end. It was a preparation for this moment. She gave up her life so she could be the echo that kept him human when he had every reason to become a god of war. This is the triumph of their story. A love so resilient it turned 1,000-year siege into a 1,000-year conversation. We finally arrive at the conclusion of the story of River and the Doctor, and witness perhaps one of the most sophisticated narratives in modern fiction. It is a romance that defies the traditional trajectory of a beginning, a middle, and an end. Instead of choosing to exist as a recursive loop, where the final chapter is also the introduction. To understand the philosophy of their conclusion, we must look back at the silence of the library, the planet-sized repository for all human knowledge, and the woman who chose to become its ghost, so the man she loved could remain its hero. This is the ultimate resolution of a love story, built on the foundation of asynchronous time. It is the moment when the spoilers finally run out, and the only thing left is the truth of the sacrifice. In the final moments of the Forest of the Dead, we are presented with a conflict of wills. The Doctor, faced with the necessity of a fatal sacrifice to save thousands of people, he is prepared to plug himself into the interface. The Doctor is the hero. It is his nature to die so that others may live, but River stops him. The dialogue here is a masterclass of the philosophy. The Doctor shouts, "Let me do this," and River responds with the devastating logic. "If you die here, it'll mean I've never met you." When the Doctor argues that time can be rewritten, River delivers the thesis of their entire relationship. Not those times, not one line, don't you dare. This is a profound exploration of what it means to value a life, to love someone. River is not doing this to save the Doctor. She is saving their history. She is protecting the happy middle we have explored through the journey. If the Doctor dies in the library, the picnic in Asgard, the night of the Singing Towers, and every page of the Blue Diary is erased from existence. By choosing to die in his place, River is acting as the custodian of the narrative. She is saying that their love is so precious that it is worth her life to ensure it remains fixed in the fabric of the universe. In fiction, we often see heroes die for a cause, but River Song dies for a memory. She dies to ensure the man standing in front of her, the man who doesn't even know her yet, gets to go on and become the man who will one day take her to Darillium. It is a selfless, circular act of devotion. It turns her death into the foundation for her life. As she prepares for the end, River experiences a moment of profound clarity. She looks at the Doctor, this young, confused version, and realizes the truth of that last night on Darillium. "Funny thing is," she says, "this means you've always known how I was going to die. All the time we've been together, you knew I was coming here. The last time I saw you, the real you, the future you. You turned up on my doorstep, a new haircut and suit, and you took me to Darillium to see the Singing Towers. What a night that was. The towers sang, and you cried, and you wouldn't tell me why. But I suppose you knew it was time. My time. Time to come to the library. You even gave me your screwdriver. That should have been a clue." This realization is the emotional anchor of the entire saga. It recontextualizes every interaction they've ever had. Where River was making sure the spoilers for the Doctor's future were hidden away, the Doctor was also hiding the fact that he had spoilers too. He was carrying the burden that he knew he was looking at a woman who was walking toward a grave he had already visited. The philosophy here is the tragedy of the informed lover. How do you love someone when you know exactly when and how they're going to leave you? The Doctor's tears on Darillium were the tears of a man who has finally reached the end of the book. By giving her the sonic screwdriver, the very tool he uses to facilitate saving her consciousness, the Doctor was not giving her a gift. He was providing her with a means for her own salvation. He was the architect of her afterlife. This is a beautiful way to conclude a romance in fiction. It suggests that even when we are powerless to stop the end, we can still prepare the way for what comes next. The Doctor couldn't save River's body, but he could save her soul, and he did it by giving her the tools she needed before she actually needed them. As the countdown to the self-destruct begins, the Doctor is haunted by one fact. River knows his name. He says, "There's only one reason I would ever tell anyone my name. There's only one time I could." In the narrative philosophy of the show, the Doctor's name is the ultimate secret. It represents his true essence, stripped of title and legend. To give someone your name is to give them total power over you. It is the most intimate act a person can perform. By whispering his name in his ear, River proved to the Doctor that she was someone he would one day trust more than anyone else in the universe. This is the triumph of the library. Even though she is dying, she is leaving the Doctor with the absolute certainty that he is capable of a love so deep that he would share his most guarded secret. It is a love story that uses future evidence to justify present faith. The Doctor trusts River because he knows that one day he will trust her. It is a beautiful recursive logic that allows their romance to bloom even in the face of death. After River's physical death, the Doctor realizes what his future self intended. He finds the data recorder in the sonic screwdriver and races to the computer core. He uploads her consciousness into the mainframe, saving her from the silence of death and placing her into a digital world where she can live forever. Philosophically, the library mainframe represents a digital Eden. It is a place where stories never end. River is reunited with her friends from the expedition, and she is given the role of a guardian of the library's children. The conclusion explores the idea of narrative immortality. River doesn't just disappear, she becomes part of the architecture of the universe. A ghost in the machine, a consciousness that lives on in a world made of stories. For a character who was an archaeologist, who spent her life digging up the past, it is perfectly poetic she ends her life as a living memory of a dead world. In fiction, we often struggle with how to give a character a good death. Riversong's death is perfect because it isn't an ending. It's a transition. She moves from the world of action to the world of memory. She becomes the happy ending that she told the Doctor was impossible. One of the most fascinating and overlooked aspects of the conclusion is the role of the Vashta Narada. They are the shadows that melt the flesh. apex predators of the universe that have claimed the library as their own. The Doctor reaches a pact with them. He gives them the library. But this introduces a narrative philosophy of a harmonious coexistence with the dark. The Vashta Nerada are the ultimate symbols of death and entropy, and they become the unintentional guardians of River's heaven. They protect the library from outsiders, ensuring the mainframe where They protect the library from outsiders, ensuring the mainframe where Liver lives. Give me one more second to try that sentence again. They protect the library from outsiders, ensuring that the mainframe where River lives remains undisturbed for eternity. This is a powerful conclusion to a love story. It suggests that even the most terrifying forces in the universe can be negotiated to protect something precious. Riversong is safe not because the universe is kind, but because the Doctor was clever enough to turn the monsters into her bodyguards. It is an interesting idea that the light and the shadow must exist together. River lives in the light of the computer core, protected by the shadows of the forest, which is an interesting narrative take from the phrase in A Good Man Goes to War, where the only water in the forest is the river. Very clever. So, we now reach the end of this podcast. We've explored River's entire life, from her birth to the creation of the weapon, to the wedding, and then finally to her death. We see a romance that successfully navigated every trope of tragedy and emerged as something triumphant. It was a story about a woman who was born to be a weapon, but chose to be a wife. It was about a man who was a lonely god who learned to be a husband. It was about a diary that started full and ended empty. It was about a screwdriver that started as a tool and ended as a soul carrier. In the objective view of the universe, Riversong died in the library. But from the subjective view of the characters, she lived 1,000 lives, she travelled the stars, she raised her own parents, she spent 24 years in a single night with a man she loved. So how do you conclude a love story like this? We conclude it by acknowledging that times end because they have to. We acknowledge that every story needs an ending to have meaning. But we also have to acknowledge that for the Doctor and River, the ending was just a spoiler for something much bigger, a more beautiful story being told in the digital halls of the library. Their romance teaches us that love is not about the beginning or the end. It is about the happy middle. It is about the pages of the diary that are stained with wine and tears. It's about the hello sweetie, the goodbye sweetie, and everything that happens in between. As River says, you and me, time and space, you watch us run. River and the Doctor didn't just have a love story. They were a love story. They were the melody and the rhythm of the universe, perfectly out of sync, but perfectly in harmony. And in the silence of the library, protected by the shadows of the Vashta Nerada, that story continues forever. It's a conclusion that feels less like a goodbye and more like a see you around. And in a universe as big as this one, this is the most empathetic, human, and beautiful conclusion anyone could hope for. The diary is full, and it's closed. The music of the Singing Towers is still echoing in the mainframe, and this is why I consider it to be one of the greatest love stories in modern fiction. Thank you so much for joining me on this podcast deep dive. I hope you all enjoyed it. I understand that it was a bit deep. So you might be wondering, why did I choose a love story for this episode of the podcast? It was meant to be the Theodicy of Lex Luthor. But when I got to sitting down and writing the script for that particular podcast, I was drawing a bit of a blank. At the time of this recording, I was sick for about the last week and a half. And before that, I did have a week holiday in Japan. I was in Tokyo, and I will have a vlog coming up for that at some point. So yesterday I sat down to write the script for a podcast. I wasn't sure if I really wanted to do the Lex Luthor one. And then I thought, why don't I explore love stories? In particular, this love story between River and the Doctor. I rewatched all of the footage from all of the shared episodes that the Doctor and River have, tying together all of the little narrative points that makes their love story so great. And it's true. Their love story isn't about how it starts or how it ends. It's about the moments they shared together, the essence of the happy middle that I was discussing during this script, which, for reference, I knocked out in about 6 hours, and I think I finished it around like 5 a.m. the day that I wrote it all down. So I might be sounding a little bit tired because I just kind of hammered out this podcast and recorded it. So yeah, I think there's a lot of value in that. I think that with Western philosophy in particular, there's so much emphasis on making sure the beginning is right, or experiencing the grief of a sad ending. The reality is, ultimately, it doesn't matter how the beginning takes place. It could just be as simple as a hello. That could be enough to get the story moving. But it's what you do with the time you have with that other person after it begins. It's about sharing that time, that finite resource that we all have. We don't get any more of it. So there's a lot of value in that. And I think that the story between River and the Doctor really emphasizes that. It shows that love between them for the time they spend together. And I think that's got a lot of merit, and that's why I wanted to explore this particular story. It also helps that it taps into my enduring love of time travel and the very time traveler's wife-esque exploration that Stephen Moffat had for the River and the Doctor and River. So yeah, I hope you all enjoyed the podcast. This will be going up on my Spotify and my YouTube, so feel free to like and subscribe if you like the content. Next week, the podcast's plan is meant to jump back on the schedule, and I want to explore a bit of a fan theory that I've had for a long time, that Dollhouse and Firefly are connected, and the Blue Sun connection, and what I thought the future of Firefly was going to be if it had not been cancelled so early. So that should be really, really interesting. Because of my sickness, I haven't been streaming a lot lately, but I'm looking to probably pick that up again from next week. So, thank you so much for coming. Like and subscribe if you like the content. I really appreciate all the support. You guys are all incredible. And if you listen in and you like what you're hearing, support the channel, help me grow. And what will happen is I will see you next week for another podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today. And stay shiny, everyone.